pre-discovery, discovery through development, and then eventually becoming a mine. We're right at that initial stage where our stock could go considerably higher on news of a big discovery just by the fact that all of a sudden you're adding a tremendous amount of value to a company that really is quite small at this point.
Welcome to the Rock Party, Jason. It's really great to have you back with us here today on Mine Stock Talk. Obviously, there's been some super exciting developments in the last little while since we last spoke to you and Mark. So one thing I just wanted to point out quickly before we get into it, for anybody who's watching this video right now but hasn't seen the previous interviews, they will be linked in the description below this video. So Jason, why don't you kick us off and give us a sense of, for retail investors that are watching, a clear 60-second overview of Silver North Resources and what you would say sets you apart from other junior silver companies.
I think I'll just start out with what separates us is that we're pure play silver explorer, which is, it's pretty hard to find these days. Silver North's focused on Yukon territory for the time being. We've kind of got a northern focus. It happens to be the Yukon territory right now, but we're kind of always looking for other new silver opportunities that might take us elsewhere in the north. But I think that's probably one of the keys for us is working in the north. We really want to focus on jurisdictions and areas that have big potential. So we're exploring in the Yukon's Keno Hill mining district. That's a 100-year-old producing silver district that still has grassroots silver discoveries possible in it, and we've proved that. But we're also working in the southern part of the Yukon with Coeur Mining in an emerging district, the Silvertip district, that Coeur's really taken some big steps in the last few years to try to, and have been successful in identifying an emerging carbonate replacement deposit district that they've really been spearheading. And it's been, they're the dominant player in this district, and there's been some neat discoveries made there. So that's kind of the example of what we look for. And I think the other key for an investor looking at Silver North is where we sit on the discovery curve. If you've ever seen the discovery curve that Pierre Lassonde sort of made famous, is just the life cycle of a junior mining company from pre-discovery, discovery through development, and then eventually becoming a mine. We're right at that initial stage where our stock could go considerably higher on news of a big discovery just by the fact that all of a sudden you're adding a tremendous amount of value to a company that really is quite small at this point. So I think for us, that's what sets us apart. I think the other part is multiple opportunities to make that discovery.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So you mentioned the Keno Hill district in the Yukon, and we've talked about it in previous interviews with you, but can you just tell us kind of a little bit about the district and also how it's related to a producer in the area?
Yeah, I mean, the long history of mining in the Yukon obviously goes back to the gold rush at the turn of the century in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And when, if some of the players or some of the prospectors, if they didn't make it in Dawson City, they headed east into the central part of the territory, and that's when Keno was discovered. So early 1900s, Galena Hill, one of the original silver showings that was found, and by the early 1920s, there was silver production happening out of the Keno area. And to be quite honest, this part of the Yukon was a big economic driver for the territory for a long time. And so, over that kind of 100-year history, you've had over 220 million ounces of silver produced here at very high grades. It's one of the highest grade silver producing regions in Canada and North America, to be quite honest. And so you'd think it's over 100 years old. It's probably all been mined out, but we're making brand new discoveries, and our neighbor who's mining at Keno Hill right now is making new discoveries. And that's really, been sort of credit to some of the science that's been done, especially the last 10 years. There's been some, and even the last 2 years, there's been some really fundamental changes in the understanding of these systems. And that is really helping Hecla explore for them. And they're really branching out on that exploration, making some deep discoveries, which were not thought to be possible a few years ago, but also looking outbound of where they've traditionally been exploring.
Now, their property is very near yours, is it not?
From the main processing area at Keno, we're probably 25 kilometers from there. The whole district itself, I've never actually measured it now that we talk about it, but it's probably 40 kilometers long. It's kind of a linear belt, and it really revolves around one particular host rock unit that is the most amenable to hosting the lead zinc silver veins. By road, we have road access right in the property. It's probably about a 25-kilometer drive to get to the processing facilities, but their ground actually abuts our property on the northeast side.
Well, one of the most fascinating things for me is learning the history of the area and stuff like that. And so, with that said, and with the jurisdiction in itself, what would you say is your path from exploration to production, say over the next 3 to 5 years?
Oh boy, you say production in 5 years. That's probably a dream.
Yeah.
You think about it this way. We're in the earliest stages of exploration here. We've drilled 16 holes to date on the property. There's only been, I think, 32 ever drilled on it. And in the 16 holes that we've drilled, 9 of those have been on one target area. So if you strip away 8 of those, because you had to discover the target with one. So in 8 holes, we've discovered 3 new zones. So our hit rate is spectacular up there. So I think for us, the path forward is we made a new discovery last year. We'll do some drilling on that this year just to get an idea of size. But we also want to test some of the other targets we have. There's nothing to say that the 3 targets that have been identified, the new discoveries, are all going to be ore bodies. So you want to check as many of these out as you can, see which ones are going to be your biggest, highest grade, and that gives you, your best chance of success going forward. So the push for us in the next couple of years, I'd say, is taking advantage of the silver market where we are, getting as much drilling done as we can, and proving up what the potential might be on the property. So either the path forward of us moving one of these targets towards development, or somebody coming in and taking it off our hands to do that.
Jason, just a quick follow up on something you mentioned. You mentioned a hit rate, and obviously, you guys are doing really well in that area. But could you possibly explain or give an example, or like what is the identifier between a good hit rate and a bad hit rate? Like what's the mathematical equation, or
You know what? There is none. There's no mathematical equation that I know of, but I've drilled enough projects where you haven't hit anything to know that it's pretty rare to make discoveries. So 2 of the discoveries we made, there was no superficial expression of the vein made on surface. So to hit those on the first hole with a drill is spectacular. Like that doesn't happen all the time. One of the most famous discoveries in British Columbia, the Eskay Creek mine, I think it was hole 109, where they finally tagged into what became the ore body. So obviously there were some indications there that kept them drilling. They were getting some good results that were pointing them in the right direction. That's 2 opposite ends of the spectrum, right? It's to hit on a first hole into a blindish target is pretty spectacular. To do it multiple times on the same project is phenomenal. Like we look at it as, it speaks to the prospectivity of our Haldane project, in that there's these indications that are there. You look at them, we have the great benefit of having all that wealth of knowledge generated from all the exploration over the last 100 years in the rest of the district, and we can start to put together our targeting criteria and look at some of these vein targets and start drilling them. And it just gives us that better rate of success. But to drill 16 holes and have 3/4 of them hit what we would consider potentially ore grade mineralization is on multiple targets is really good. And we kind of, just for the benefit, I think I probably said it the last time we spoke with you, we kind of look at 3 to 5 meters of 300 grams silver as kind of our cutoff. And that's based on what they're doing at Hecla. I know they can go narrower veins with higher grade, but 300 grams is kind of the cutoff they use for their reserve calculation. So that's a logical number for us to use. If we're finding veins of width at that grade, good chance that that would go through a mill.
At 𝕊𝕆𝕃𝕍𝐼, which is obviously the property we're mostly talking about right now, are you drilling presently, or is the drill program moving forward?
No, we launched a financing last week, I believe it was, that will raise money to go execute that next phase of drilling at 𝕊𝕆𝕃𝕍𝐼. That'll probably start late July or early August is kind of what we're timing. Not active right now, but what will be later this summer.
So that's the plan, though, is to start it up once you do the financing, which you've mentioned now. And how is it going? We did see the news release about it.
Yeah, it's interesting when you launch these, you go out there, you have an indication that you might be able to raise the money, and of course, silver being had a bit of a run the last few months, the environment is much better for raising money. So probably the timing just being, around the Canada Day holiday and 4th of July in the US, it's a little slow, but it's just a matter of reaching out to the people we need to and locking them up. So we feel good about getting this done, and looking forward to getting out in the field to keep proving our exploration theories.
Great. So that means that there is definitely drills are going to hit the ground later on. And of course, you're right suggesting that an explorer that finds some good holes at a certain time will affect the stock price, especially now that silver's moving and people are starting to look at these markets. So your stock, I think now is around 15 Canadian. And once the drill program gets going, that should improve, I would guess.
Yeah, and I think if you look at where we were, we've doubled from where we were in say January. A lot of that has to do with, it's a combination of the silver market's done well, but also the fact that I think people are starting to understand the new discovery we made at 𝕊𝕆𝕃𝕍𝐼 last year could be quite significant. We think it's a bit of a game changer. But we've had quite a run, and so we got up to, I think, 17 cents or so, and then it's going to come off and consolidate here for a bit. And especially once you get into June, July, August, it's often a slower time in the market, right? We've often told people in the past, look, if you're looking to put up could possibly change, not just for us, but I think in general, if the silver price takes off again after a little bit of a consolidation. But generally speaking, I like to tell people I think the best time to get positions in these companies is July and August, and just sit on it, be patient, and watch. So yeah, I think that's one of the drivers kind of on the share price. And it's interesting, when we switched from being sort of agnostic to the commodity, we were just looking for good projects. When we decided to focus on silver, I was a little surprised at how a small silver explorer could be so tied to the silver price. You maybe couldn't look at it day to day and say, yeah, silver's up today, we're up. But when you looked at your chart over a month period, it was definitely tied to the price of silver. So I think that it plays a big role in just interest level, people looking at your stock.
Well, we're noticing it too, in the sense that we're talking often to retail investors, and many more of them are now looking for things in the precious metals, and silver is attractive. And as you say, there's not many around that have a silver property that could become seriously significant. And I agree with you in this sense. At the exploration stage, you could see the stock do a 2x or something like that on one or two holes. It clearly can happen. Usually not in the summer, but it can happen.
Like say in our case, we start drilling, let's say it's August 1st, we start. You're not getting drill results out probably until October. Any trading that happens in that time is just, it's anticipation. It's you're looking at what the silver price is doing. But we always go back to sort of the basic tenet for us is it doesn't really matter what the silver price is doing. If we make a discovery, a high grade discovery with big potential, that's where the value is going to come from. A good silver price just brings more eyes to that story. So it can help maybe accelerate that addition of value very quickly. But it's deeply rooted in the fact that we add value by making discoveries, adding ounces to the inventory. That's how you add value for an investor.
No question about that. And I think it also helps who your neighbor is and how close they are. I mean, they got to be watching what you guys are up to.
You know what? Hecla's their and their predecessor before them, 𝐒𝐈𝐋𝐕𝐄𝑑, were fantastic neighbors as far as sharing information. Like, it's no word of a lie. I can phone up their exploration guys and say, "Hey, have you ever seen this before?" And they'll be, "Yeah, we've seen that," or "No, that's a little different. We don't see that at." And so very open. They've seen all our core. When we announced our discovery, in the fall last year, there's a conference up in Whitehorse that Hecla had a big presence at. A bunch of their C-suite people were there, and we stood around our core for probably 45 minutes just chatting about it and various aspects of what they observed and how it fit into the story. So yeah, they've been fantastic neighbors, and really happy to have them working next to us because they are very gracious with their knowledge and helping out.
Well, we've talked about Keno and the Haldane project, so it would be really great to get a little bit of a snippety update on the core partnership and how it's progressing the Tim property, and what would that mean for shareholders.
The upside on that deal is it's just another shot at discovery, again, adding value quickly to a small company. And the important piece that I don't think is very well known in the business is that, Coeur had their Silvertip operation. It was running. They weren't getting the silver recoveries they wanted out of the mill, so they did the smart thing and they shut it down and said, "Okay, we gotta fix this." But at the same time, they were doing a bunch of exploration and realized, geez, we don't know how big this could be. Like, let's not rebuild the mill right away. Let's figure out how big this project's going to be, what size mill, what components we're going to let's do this smart. So they went out and they've done a bunch of exploration, spending 20 million bucks a year kind of thing over the last few years on exploration, and are quietly hitting it out of the park. They've basically tripled the resource at Silvertip in the last few years. They've taken a much more holistic sort of district scale approach to exploration, not just right in the vicinity of the original deposit, but looking at the whole potential CRD district as a whole. And so when you take this kind of systems-based approach to your exploration, you can be a little bit more objective and look at kind of vectors with where you might be in a system and not worry so much about just hitting high grade silver in every hole. And that's the approach they've taken at Tim. They drilled the 6 holes last year, proved that there's a CRD system at work there. There's various geological characteristics that were noted that show that. Even got some indications that they might be fairly close to the heat source. So you got to kind of find that sweet spot in the system where you're going to get high grade silver undiscovered. So we didn't get any high grade silver hits in our drilling, which I found a little surprising, but it's the way it goes in exploration. That's how it is. But they're undaunted. They were like, these are good results. We're quite happy with this. So they're moving that forward. So really happy with having them involved. They are the experts in this district. So having that knowledge to bring to bear is fantastic for our shareholders. So yeah, it's great having those guys involved, and we look forward to the next phase of work there.
So the Tim property, just so everybody understands this, it's actually in the Yukon, right? But it's very close to the BC border.
So the Silvertip district, CRD district, that's called that. I don't know if anyone else calls it that. I call it that. Silvertip being the mine that sort of cores the whole thing. It's seems logical. Extends into the southern part of the Yukon territory from British Columbia. So yes, the mine sits on the British Columbia side of the border, but there is a portion of the district to the north in the Yukon, and that's where Tim sits, as well as we've got a couple other claim groups that we acquired last year that are also on the north side of the border, targeting the same style of mineralization.
Well, that sounds like a really exciting project. And I mean, they're an amazing company. So working across the border, I guess that does not present any kind of a problem. It's still drill, discover, see what happens.
Yeah, it's two different permitting regimes as far as you're submitting permit applications for your work in British Columbia versus on the other side it's through the Yukon. So there's a bit of a learning curve for Coeur in that respect, but it's essentially the same process.
Well, I mean, one of the things I really like about Silver North is the diversification of your portfolio in terms of your projects. And so the last one we're going to talk about is the Veronica project. Is there any updates on that and its potential moving forward?
Yeah, so Veronica is one of the ones that I mentioned. We had some other acquisitions in the area we picked up. It's actually contiguous with the western corner of Tim. I think the claims touch at a vertex in the claim group, but it's an untested 450 by 450 meter soil geochemical anomaly that looks like it could be carbonate replacement silver deposit related. It's never been followed up. There's been very little prospecting and mapping done in that area. So we applied for a grant through the Yukon's Yukon Mineral Exploration Program, where they'll fund or grant up to $40,000 in funding for applicable exploration expenditures. So we qualified for just under $30,000 grant on that. It'll when it all said and done, it probably comes in about $100,000 budget for that, and it's just going to be some more soil sampling, mapping, prospecting, just see if that Veronica CRD story holds together there as well. And then sometime in the fall, early winter, should our expenditures all qualify, we'd be able to get about 30,000 back. So that's an exciting one for us, just because it's proximity to Tim. Obviously, we've talked to Coeur about that project too. So I think if we see some results there, we could see further partnerships with them. But I think it just speaks to this whole emergence of that Silvertip district, that there's not many players. It's us, there's Coeur, and there's a couple other groups that hold ground in the area that haven't done a lot recently. So it's kind of flying under the radar, but it's kind of the perfect place for us to be, because we can make these brand new discoveries.
And you've got a good relationship going with Coeur, so obviously that will pay a dividend if you add a project like that. So just shifting a little bit then from the projects themselves to kind of the market. So we've obviously silver's done pretty good in 2024. It looks good for 2025, and so we see a silver price increase. And you've mentioned it a little bit, but does that help with raising capital?
Oh, for sure. And it's both the price where it sits now, but also people's comfort level of where it might be going. And I think when you look at, gold's been running, silver often runs for the same reasons. Those, economic uncertainty, it just tends to maybe lag a bit, and it is a little bit more elastic, goes higher on the way up and maybe lower on the way down. So we see these whipsaws in the price, maybe a little bit more than gold. But I think overall, people look at silver right now and say there's this underlying also industrial driver there that hasn't been there in the past. And I think that investors are just starting to really grasp that. We've been talking about it for the last 18 months. People way smarter than me have been talking about it longer than that. And I think the average investor is probably just starting to turn to that idea that, things like solar power require so much silver. We've just seen such a rapid increase in the demand for silver for these industrial applications, and it's not been fully realized. I think that's starting to change people's outlook and say, okay, silver's got a bright future, not just for the next 6 months, but for the next 4 or 5 years, whatever it may be, and even longer. So I think that, combined with where the price is today, helps people get comfortable with investing in silver companies. So, as we see in all sectors in exploration and in mining, money goes first to the big big companies, the producers, the developers, and then it's the advanced stage projects, and it'll make its way down to our level at some point. Probably not there yet, but again, that's great news for a retail investor, because if you find a few companies that you really like, I'm going to put some money in those, and you're ahead of those generalists coming down and starting to look lower and lower down the food chain in the silver space. You benefit obviously from that increased demand. So I think that's kind of the rationale for people kind of just turning to it now. And as always, it's the early stage explorers that are kind of the last to see that, but I think we see it coming.
Yeah, I think you will see it coming. It's funny, the way you mention it makes sense. Investment would obviously go to producers and then down into the one building the mill. Then got to eventually whoever's producing is going to have to buy new property or find new property. So time for a retail investor to step in if they do their homework and follow a company with good management like yourself. Looking at juniors, etc., what would you say it gives you guys some competitive advantage at this time?
I think the project locations being in these emerging and existing districts. I think it's the old adage, where's the best place to find a new mine? Beside an old one, right? I think that's a real key for us. And I think when we look at the types of deposits that are able to produce, high grade, long life mines, Keno's shown it already, and Silvertip, the CRD type systems. I think people recognize those as being, large, can be high grade, long lived projects. So I think that really sets us apart. I think the other part that we probably don't talk about as much, but myself and my vice president of exploration, Rob Duncan, have, well, I won't even say how many years of experience we have in the Yukon, because that makes me seem pretty old. But I've been working in the Yukon since the early 1990s, and Rob very similarly. So we're very comfortable there. Good working knowledge of the rocks in the Yukon, and know how to explore there. So people will say rocks are rocks, doesn't matter where you go in the world, but being able to work in a jurisdiction, I think, is pretty important, and we're pretty comfortable working in the Yukon.
And I'm going to guess that you know the communities fairly well, and which would cover the area of ESG, which we've talked to you about before. But that's an important thing. You're very familiar with the area.
Especially when things can change so quickly, right? Like you get, if you're talking about First Nations, like you get a change in leadership in a First Nation, you have to be able to adapt to that, and build new relationships with new leadership. And so having sort of a broader based knowledge of the community, I think, helps with that. It's also working, the First Nations that, especially in the Keno district, they've been around mining forever, right? 100 plus years. So they understand what mining does and what it brings. And so there's less of that educational component there of, what it actually is. And I think they better understand the timelines involved. So that's a real plus, working in the areas that we are.
Again, that we always point this out, that those things are extremely important to us as investors in any type of space, especially in precious metals and mining. Talking about the retail investor again, because we're kind of really focusing a lot on that, because we really want to help get the stories out and really help promote the industry in itself. But for a retail investor, what would you say is the main risks that they should be or understanding before they invest?
Big one is exploration is exploration, and meaning you don't often find success. What's the stat? 1 in 10,000 drill projects becomes a mine. So you have to understand, I think, that aspect of it. So it really comes down to, okay, you're picking companies, but is it just a good drill hole? Well, a good drill hole all by itself may not necessarily mean much. Is the management good? Is the jurisdiction good? What else has been found in that area? And there's no hard and fast rules here. Like if you make the first discovery in a new area, doesn't mean it's not ever going to make it. I mean, Snowline Gold is a great example. Like that's out in a fairly remote part of the Yukon, but that deposit is so significant that I think it's going to be able to survive the remoteness. And it's got the grade and the size to back it. In that case, and this is where it gets tough for a retail investor, well, how much does your management team really know? And so you almost got to get to know them. So you should be able to phone them up and have a conversation and ask about what their approach to exploration is and what's the, so the credentials of the team. And again, that can be tough. Like in our case, there's two of us. There's Rob and myself. We look after basically all aspects of the company, and including the fundraising with Mark. So some could look at us and say, wow, there's not a big enough team to make a discovery there. But I think we've already, sort of proved it at Haldane that, yeah, we've identified a region with prospectivity that discoveries can be made. So it's really that exploration success or chances of success that are a big risk for the retail investor. I think the other one is just, especially with silver, unless you have a very strict investing mindset and criteria to back that mindset, fluctuations in the silver price and the company's share price can scare people out. And it happens all the time where you get, for whatever reason, silver takes a nosedive for a few weeks, maybe in a few months. The company invariably is going to see the same response in its share price. People are like, okay, well, it's out, it's all over. Well, it may not be. That may be a short-lived thing, but it does tend to shake people out. And especially, they call it the wall of worry when you're into the early stages of bull market. Well, that's why it's called the wall of worry, because people get out early out of these stories. And so I think it's becoming comfortable with stories that, unless you see the story change, you kind of got to stick to your guns. Like, there's got to be a reason for either maybe the silver market has turned south and you don't think it's going to last. Well, that may be your reason to get out. Or the company's exploration thesis isn't holding together, then that's your reason. If it's something other than just changes in market sentiment over the short term, you got to be able to stick to your guns. So I think those are the two biggest risks from my perspective. Hecla came in thinking that the idea here was to tune up some of these operations, make them a little more efficient, and they've got ideas on how to do that. And hopefully we'll be there with the next deposit for them to add to that mining portfolio.
Which would be a great deal. There's no question they got to be watching everything you guys are doing in that area. And so it makes it a very exciting project. And as you have mentioned to us, you've put together the package to finance some more drilling activity that we'll hear maybe results in the fall, which would be something I'm sure that they'll want to hear about too.
Oh yeah. Well, they were one of the first people to congratulate us on our last set of results. So that was really nice to see.
Now, we know you have a wonderful website, which we're going to link very kindly below, so that investors pay attention. You can go there and sign up for their newsletter so you can stay up to snuff on the latest current information and news and developments as things continue to roll forward.
Yeah, no, it's a great place to start. We're always updating it. So, and then our latest presentation is always linked on that site as well. So.
And we'll make sure that your news is published on our site each day too, that you bring it out. We'll all be watching it. And as investors in the stock, we're glad to hear that you're progressing forward with it, because it sounds fantastic.
Seeking the inside track on Silver North resources? Look no further than minestalkers.com. Our cutting-edge search tool is not only designed to reveal hidden gems, but also provides real-time stock updates. Visit for the insights and stay for the gains. Seize the opportunity and explore the magic at minestalkers.com. Uncover new investment possibilities today. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video. Let's get the word out there.